where are mammals moving? So the climate is changing. It's risen 1.1 degrees Celsius since 1880, about. And in the US, it is also changing. This shows the the rate of change in temperature across the country in the past century. So, is climate change pushing mammals to one region of their range? Is it the southern region or the northern region? Our objective was to examine how mammals species are distributed across their range. And my hypothesis is that mammal species are going to be clustered in the northern portions of their range, because if they were here before, then the climate is changing, so the temperature at the latitude here is going to shift up here. So in the future, this range will be up here. So we use some snapshot USA data from years 2019 through 2021, and then we use Tableau to visualize this and create some graphs and maps, and did a lot of sitting at the computer like this. Here's the species overview. We selected the top 10 species with a pretty good distribution across the United States, and also a good amount of data. So black bears, red squirrels, bobcats, coyotes, elk, mule deer, nine-banded armadillo, red fox, Virginia possum, white-tailed deer. Then I plotted the average detection rate with both on its own and with standard error, which is this bar up here. Detection rate indicates abundance because if more animals are visiting that site, they're going to be detected more often. And so the higher the average detection rate, the more abundant that species is at that location. So I divided up their ranges into 3 sections with the latitudes, so a northern range, a middle range, and a southern range, and then plotted them all next to each other. So mule deer was really the only species that followed my hypothesis. It looks like just barely they're most abundant in their northern range, and also pretty much in their mid-range, but they're also pretty concentrated on the western, in the western region of the United States, which I found interesting. 4 species had highest average detection rate in the middle of their range, so black bears, coyotes, elks, and American red squirrel. Black bears and coyotes had the most similar maps to each other, and then elk and red squirrel, I don't know, you could probably find some similarities, but it's seemingly random. I didn't find many patterns with this one. The highest detection rate in the southern range was kind of interesting. It was red fox and white-tailed deer. And you can see it's just barely higher in both of these, especially with red fox. And their maps are pretty similar. So I thought that was interesting. They're more eastern focused across the Midwestern US too. And then there were 3 species that were pretty evenly distributed across their entire range. So the 9-banded armadillo, bobcats, and Virginia opossum. So I wanted to look at their maps next to each other, and they all had pretty high concentrations in the southeast, which I thought was really interesting, and the most interesting result from this study, because it reminded me of this map from the beginning. So the data did not support my original idea that species are more abundant in the northern part of their range, except for the mule deer. And most species had the highest abundance in the middle of their range. And the species that I said before, they were all pretty abundant in this southeastern region. So this region is also looks like the region of the US with the lowest rate of change in temperature. So things haven't changed compared to the rest of the country in the past century. So it makes sense if things are staying the same, they don't have as much push to move anywhere. It was also interesting that the western species, the mule deer, were moving north, because that is the region of the country that seems like one of the most has experienced some of the most change in the past century, aside from the Northeast as well. All right, thank you for watching. Have a good day.